I don't think the comparison between what President Trump went through and what Richard Nixon went through 50 years ago is that helpful. I think what President Trump went through was actually much worse. He was attacked by the deep state. You had FBI agents during the 2016 election writing back and forth to each other about how they were going to make sure that he was never elected president. You had the FBI director at the time framing him in the Oval Office at Trump Tower. You had a number of people in the government undermining him. You had the release phone call of the so-called Ukrainian problem with Joe Biden and Hunter Biden when Hunter Biden was doing all of the corruption that President Trump simply asked about before he wanted to send American aid into a corrupt country. So I think that the comparison between the two, it's just there are two very different scenarios. And I think that comparing them is not very helpful to the average American who's not thinking about that in terms of who they're going to vote for.
No, I don't know. I think they're a little smarter than you're assuming. I think they like to hear what their leaders believe.
I don't think they're stupid. I didn't say they're not smart. I'm saying I don't think they do care about this kind of stuff. I don't think the Watergate scandal is going to be a top issue when it comes to what people are voting on. Do you think that's going to be the case?
I think you are trying to belittle the argument. Do you really think that my argument is Richard Nixon's going to decide the next election? Of course you are. Katie, you're trying to cheapen it because you don't want to deal with it. I get why you don't want to deal with it. I wouldn't either if I were in your shoes. I'm not cheapening anything. Okay, so let me say it a different way.
Well, I talk to conservative voters all the time. I was on the National Mall today talking to people who are coming for the 250th. They're not worried about the Nixon scandal and the Watergate from many, many years ago. They're worried about their lives today.
Do you really think I'm talking to you about the Watergate scandal, or do you think I'm talking to you about a man who you may say should be president soon?
What are you talking to me about, Chris? What are you talking to me about?
Here's what I'm talking to you about, Katie. I'll say it again. I'm sorry if I'm unclear. JD Vance said the Watergate scandal and what Richard Nixon did should not have ended his presidency. That's a stupid thing to say. He committed a string of felonies that his main advisors went to prison for, and your party went up to him and said, resign or you're going to go down. I'm not in a party. So he resigned. Okay, Chris, I'm not in a party. I'm a registered independent. I'm not in a party, first of all. Okay.
Second of all,
apology. What I'm saying is,
what is a problem is the Democratic Socialists of America who won elections this week.
I thought we'd get to
who believe in bringing Palestinian-style violence to the streets of America, who want to destroy the country. But you want to keep talking about the Richard Nixon Watergate scandal from many, many years ago.
No, I want to talk about both. Because let me tell you something.
And accuse me of belittling the American voter and not thinking they're smart enough to understand the differences between these things.
That's how I took what you said, and let me show you how I'll do it differently. You just mentioned the DSA. I would never vote for them, but let me tell you why they're winning. If you were to stand up and say, listen, I think that Palestinians should kill as many Jews as they could, you're not going to get elected. If you stand up and say, you know, I think that Hamas's terrorism is a good thing. I definitely don't think that it's enough not to vote for somebody. I don't think you're getting elected. And none of those DSA people say that. They say things I find ugly and objectionable. They're winning despite it.
That's not true.
What JD Vance just did is say that the high watermark for corruption in American history doesn't impress me and shouldn't have ended the guy's presidency. I'm not relitigating Watergate. I don't need to. I'm not saying that people are going to talk about Watergate. I'm saying that a man that many people in the Republican Party think should be the next president just said he doesn't think what Richard Nixon did was so bad. And that's crazy and stupid to say.
Okay.
Now, the DSA is also doing something crazy and stupid.
To say that America should be destroyed and that Western civilization should be taken down from within, and that we should undermine and eradicate America as we know it, that there's nothing short of the total collapse of the structure and the American, quote, empire itself. These people are getting elected in real positions in New York, and they're not people who want lower rent. They want to destroy the country. And you're talking about the Watergate scandal. They
want both. And just like when I finally got a grip on MAGA, you know, months earlier than many other people, which is why I kept saying, well, I put it this way. I made a lot of money off $1 bets that Trump was going to beat Hillary Clinton. When a lot of people didn't. It's kind of the stuff of Cuomo mythology. Why did I think that? Because I realized that the ugly things that I saw coming out of MAGA, the prejudice, the white nationalism, the Christian nationalism, That was the
that
few.
was made up by the Southern Poverty Law Center?
And thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.